Cross has been working here since 1969. When government troops rescued the politician Ingrid Betancourt and 14 other hostages in July 2008, they disguised themselves as Red Cross workers. ICRC denounced the hijacking of its emblem as a breach of the Geneva Conventions.
It was simply considered by us as unacceptable because the problem that it generates for us is that people will later look at this emblem as being a sort of a, one-size-fits-all or serves every purpose, and would then diminish the protective strength that it has for us.
In Colombia, humanitarian actors are caught up in a vicious triangle of conflict between government forces, leftist insurgents, and brutal right-wing paramilitaries. Working without appearing to take sides is an especially hard task. Every morning, refugees fleeing from Colombia's conflict arrive at the International Red Cross post in Saravena, close to the Venezuelan border.
Why are you here? I was forced to leave my community. An armed group arrived and told me I had to leave. They told me I had till the next Sunday to leave alive, otherwise I would die.
Saravena is a town of 24,000. Nearly half are refugees fleeing the violence.
There was a lot of violence in my region and the guerrilla were on a recruiting drive. My girls were 12, 15, 18 years old. The guerrillas killed 2 girls in their school, so we had to leave.
Fear of landmines is another reason villagers moved to the towns. In 2009, there were an estimated 1,200 civilian casualties.
One Saturday, I was working in my land, and I went to cut down some bananas. I stood on a mine, and that was the end of my working life.
Since then, Don Hernando has received a prosthetic limb from the Red Cross.
What would be ideal is for a person in need to arrive to the state institution in charge and get the aid he needs. But the reality is that there are always delays in one process or another. And I think that is where the Red Cross can play a part, not before, not afterwards. We are there to act when there is an immediate need.
The biggest humanitarian agency in Colombia is Acción Social. We are investing $250 million per year in providing humanitarian assistance to the internally displaced population. And last year, just we did more than 500 humanitarian missions in order to provide services for those people that has an emergency because of violence. The country knows that it has a problem, but it has developed systems and approach and institution in order to provide humanitarian assistance.
Being part of the state apparatus, Acción Social has an inside track. It moves in after military action, hoping to win local support for the government. But humanitarian agencies argue that this carrot-and-stick approach can cause confusion.
Wherever humanitarian activity is mixed up with other than humanitarian goals, the problem starts, because it's always a politics or a goal that is not shared by all, because otherwise there will not be a conflict.
President Juan Manuel Santos Calderon was elected in 2010. Coming from the same party as former President Uribe, his election is evidence of the strong support throughout a war-weary country for the tough approach Uribe took. But there are those who believe the government went too far. Congress member Ivan Cepeda has led the campaign against alleged human rights violations by the armed forces. Recently, a graveyard of 486 unidentified bodies was discovered outside the military barracks in La Macarena in central Colombia.
The information that we have is that there have been multiple and many violations of human rights in that area, forced displacement, disappearances, and on top of that, what have become known as false positives in Colombia, where the military kills civilians and then claim they were guerrillas killed in combat.
The government's Justice and Peace Commission says over 2,000 mass graves have been found. They're alleged to be mostly the work of extreme right-wing paramilitary groups with their undisputed links to elements in the army and government. In San Onofre, on Colombia's northern Caribbean coast, Congressman Cepeda and human rights groups say that the paramilitaries murdered hundreds of civilians in order to protect the drug trafficking routes and interests of large landowners.
When the paramilitary arrived, all our dreams were destroyed by violence. And the Colombian state has never answered for what we lost. They make promises on paper, but not in practice.
They killed my son. They bombed my business. They raped my daughter. They are slowly killing me with pain.
Money does not solve this. They could give us money, but our souls and hearts will not heal.
The United Nations High Commission for Refugees is the most visible international humanitarian agency working with the internally displaced in Colombia. Today, a UNHCR mission is on its way to assess the situation in San Onofre.
At the surface, things might seem quiet and calm, but really the violence subsists. Perhaps it has changed its forms, perhaps it is less extreme, but you do find it. And it's very important that humanitarian agencies are on the ground with them and that they try to find ways to nurture the few signs of normal life that still continue in San Onofre.
UNHCR has started programs that will help school children deal with the psychological scars of war.
The children have been witness of people being taken from their homes, beaten up or killed. And that behavior is what they're replicating at school.
My husband was killed when the violence in San Onofre began. So ask yourself, how does a mother with 6 children and a murdered husband cope when she is displaced in the city? The children are going to end up doing drugs and the girls in prostitution.
Former President Uribe criticized the work of the United Nations, claiming it hampered his strategy of democratic security.
We defend the rights of the innocent civilian population in the conflict, and the state considers that this obstructs their military strategy. Just because we are defending the rights of civilians who remain outside the conflict. It is an attitude that has become common in the polarization of Colombia in recent years.
In the nearby city of Cartagena, the authorities have started a program to reintegrate former combatants into society.
If the heads of these terrorist and criminal organizations don't want to talk peace, then we're going to talk to the base of these organizations. And that's what the reintegration process is. Today in Colombia, we have over 50,000 people that have left illegal armed groups.
This is a meeting between former combatants taking part in the program.
I feel safe in an armed group, not here.
We want to change, and we want a job to move on to and provide for our family.